Hello, and welcome to this special discussion on something that has plagued the Modi government for 10 years. Right from the start, when Modi government came to power and Prime Minister Narendra Modi took over as the reins, the one problem that has plagued this government is the demand by farmers in India for a minimum guaranteed price for their produce. Uh, this whole issue has been through several twists and turns, administrative twists and turns, political twists and turns. And as we stand today, just a few months before the general elections 2024, we again have the farmers protesting on the borders of Haryana, and there is no sign of any agreement being arrived at between the farmers and the Modi government. Uh, there's every sign that the farmers' agitation is going to be further going to be escalated. The problem remains the same. The demand which was there at the beginning of Modi government's tenure 10 years ago in 2015, 2014, the same demand remains that the farmers want a minimum support price, but this time guaranteed into the law, into the legislation. Uh, so, so we thought we will today we'll have with us to discuss this whole issue threadbare. Uh, a very well-known former finance secretary, Subhash Garg, very well known because he worked with this government. That's why we thought that we'll have him really talk about what really happened in the course of uh, policy making when he was there in the government between 2017 and 2019 as finance secretary. Uh, what was the thinking in the PMO? How the Prime Minister himself proposed that the farmers should get a minimum support price for 23 items of food, which is the big contentious issue, and how a whole process was started under when he was finance secretary. He was part of those meetings in the PMO. So that's why we have Mr. Subhash Garg to talk about what exactly happened then, and he also has his views on the whole issue. So he has been a very forthright, upright, and straight shooting bureaucrat who spoke his mind when he was there. So all the better to have somebody like him. And he's also written a book called last year, which was released. We also make policy, an insider account of how the finance ministry functions. Now, in this inside, as part of the insider account, is also the whole process of how the MSP issue was dealt with by the Prime Minister. Welcome to our show, Mr. Subhash Garg. We are happy to have you and talk to our audience about this one chapter in your book, which in many ways is very interesting and it's also very intriguing. It's titled "Wooing Farmers." So, Mr. Garg, I'll begin by asking you.
Thank you, Venu, for this invitation. Thank you.
Yeah, and Mr. Garg, I'll begin by asking you. In your chapter, you make a very interesting point, which is you start by saying that around 2018, before the budget 2018-19, because the next year was a general election 2019, there was this chapter suggests that there was a lot of eagerness from the Prime Minister himself, and the Prime Minister's office came with a proposal which you describe as a fait accompli, which means the Prime Minister's office came with a proposal to give a minimum support price guaranteed for 23 items, besides, of course, rice, wheat, rice, and others that we already know. The entire 23 items, which has been a matter of contention. which has not happened even today. So please tell us what happened when Mr. Nipendra Mishra, the Principal Secretary, came with a full proposal uh, to give, minimum support price for 23 items. And it kind of surprised you people, because you never thought, you probably thought that the issue would be first discussed with you people, and then the proposal will be formulated. But here, when you say fait accompli, you are implying that the Prime Minister's office came with a proposal on its own, and it kind of surprised you. Can you tell us what happened there?
So, Venu, this proposal to give minimum support price with 50% profit element has been on the BJP's agenda. This was there in 2014 manifesto as well.
Yeah.
However, there was not any activity about this until the year 2018.
Yeah.
To which I was party.
Okay.
I say that there may not be any discussion with the Agriculture Ministry or department, other people's.
Yeah.
But I wasn't a party to this until 2018.
So for 4 years, there was no activity on this big promise by Mr. Modi during the campaign, 2014 campaign, that farmers' income, that there'll be 50%.
Let us be clear. As far as the budget making is concerned.
Yeah.
So there is two different things. Budget.
Yeah, you come in only because of budget. You are the finance secretary, right? Yeah. Okay.
So primarily we come for the budget. Yeah. Of course, the larger economic policy is also where the finance ministry and the Department of Economic Affairs is quite concerned, and also the Department of Expenditure. But very closely at the time of the budget formulation. So when 2018 budget was being framed, 2018-19 budget, I have described this graphically in the book. We also make policy, you can read it. On one day, and we would have meetings on the budget proposals and other economic policy issues almost daily on something or the other. So one day when I went there for discussion, I found Principal Secretary Nipendra Mishra having 2 sheets of paper, and he just gave it to me to have a look. And what I found was that on one, you had the calculation relating to the 23 crops, that what is the current state of their procurement, and how much is the what we call A2 and FL price, which is basically a base price for base cost for determination of the MSP, which is A2 would mean that all paid costs. So whatever the farmers buy, fertilizers, seeds, whatever, is the paid cost, which is known as A2. And FL is the farmers' labor cost, imputed cost.
The imputed the family labor cost,
Correct. So family labor, FL is family labor.
And 50% over that,
So that is what, and the sheet had that what is the current MSP, and the difference between the two, the MSP minus AL and A2 and FL cost, is the current margin, right? So which was in some cases higher than 50%, and in some cases lower than 50%.
Yeah, in many cases you mentioned, many cases, especially Kharif crops, it was below 50%. The price that farmer was getting was below 50%, right?
So that is precise distinction I could see, that barring rice, which is a major crop, which had less than 50% margin, it was most of the Kharif crops, the pulses and the edible oils, which are grown in mostly rain-fed conditions, less irrigated conditions. There the margin was less than. 50%. And on the other sheet was that if you give minimum 50% and maintain what the other crops which are currently having more than 50%,
that's all 23 crops. That's all 23
all
crops, right?
23%, minimum 50%, and keeping the existing ones which are higher than 50 at that level.
Yeah.
Right. So if let us say wheat has 80%, so you continue to have 80%, and for the other crops you will 50%.
Yeah.
That was and then what would be the MSP that was worked out.
Yeah.
So I simply said, this. I was internally a bit surprised because that was not the matter discussed. There were many other proposals discussed, but this was not one which was discussed until that stage.
So this means, can I just take a moment here? Which means, Mr. Garg, which means the PMO was very keen to push it, since without discussing with you people, they came with a proposal that we have to implement this, which means it must have come directly from the Prime Minister, right?
I can't say that. It might have come directly from the Agriculture Ministry as well.
Okay.
Via the Prime Minister.
But later you say that in many of the meetings, Prime Minister himself sat in some of the meetings.
That is for the implementation decision.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So the PM would have been very much in the loop, right? Yeah.
Of course, PMO, Mr. Pen Mishra was the head of the PMO.
Yeah.
And whatever happens in the PMO will certainly have the blessings of the Prime Minister. But I have no direct knowledge that how many times before this was brought to us to incorporate in the budget speech, was this discussed or not discussed? So that is something which I am making clear.
Okay.
So I said simply that let us understand, because there are some implications of whenever you do it, if you have to buy the crops to keep that the prices don't fall below the MSP, then you have to procure. And if you procure and you're not able to sell that at that price, then it affects the food subsidy and the agricultural subsidy of the government.
Yeah.
So I said, let me go back and do some calculations. We quickly did some calculations based on Economic Affairs Secretary Arvind Subramaniam at that time assisted. And we assumed that whatever was being procured at that time, if that much is required to be procured, then our calculation suggested that you would have a bill of about 35,000 crores.
Yeah.
So that is what we brought back. Of course, since this was a kind of decision which had already been made, we incorporated this into the budget speech.
Okay. So another fact that you bring out in this chapter, in this very, very fascinating chapter in your book, is that the Prime Minister was so eager to implement this this comprehensive scheme where for all 23 crops of MSP should be given based on a certain formula which you just described. And the Prime Minister himself, you bring out the fact that he himself chaired a few meetings at the PMO. In the Prime Minister's office, meetings happened. I presume you were part of those meetings since you're describing them. Prime Minister himself chaired a few meetings and he was very eager. But then you say later that in one of the meetings subsequently, Mr. Prime Minister...
Before you come to that final chapter, I think let me describe. So what happens is that once you made this decision, now the government has to implement that decision. Otherwise, why do you make the decision? So the meeting started. In fact, budget announcement itself said that we will come up with a foolproof system to implement the new announcement. Because the credibility of announcement is in terms of its implementation. You have to arrange the affairs of the procurement of the crops in such a way that... So there were three formulas which came up during those discussions. One was this traditional method where the FCI or the NAFED would buy from the market and try to raise the price to the MSP level, and that would end up holding that stock, and later on they will either the food security program or otherwise dispose that off. So that is the traditional method in which The second method was also important. It's a new innovation which Madhya Pradesh was trying at that time.
Yeah, the Bhavanta scheme. Yeah.
That's correct. So
Yeah.
that you let the farmers sell in the market at whatever price they get in the market, and the difference between the MSP and the sale price which they
Selling
got,
price, the government pays them. Yeah.
the government pays them. So that was the second thing. The third one was which came from the Niti Aayog, which was entrusted with the task of formulating this for a foolproof formula. It
But
was
that
a
was
more
rejected. The Niti Aayog, you said, was rejected, that proposal,
no,
right?
but before you reject it, you need to understand what it is.
Yeah.
So that formula was that let us create a procurement arrangement through the brokers and the adatiyas and the
Okay.
stockists. Let them buy at whatever price the market is there, and let them sell this later on, and they may be compensated for, or let them buy at the MSP from the farmers, and
Yeah.
let them then sell at whatever
Yeah.
price. The
Yeah.
difference is made good for them. So these were the three things. Many meetings were held,
Yeah.
and it emerged in those meetings that the third one was something which was not workable at all. There were doubts about the second scheme as well, because this was prone, it was felt that this was prone for corruption.
Yeah.
Fake sales might be generated, fake
Yeah.
prices may
It,
be.
it could be misused, etc. Yeah.
So that is when the prime minister heard people very patiently. In many meetings, solution was not emerging, and now you can sort of describe what you
Yeah.
wanted to
So
describe.
now, so after this, so Mr. Garg, after you study all the three options for implementation, and
Right.
then you go through various, the third option gets rejected, second option also you find would have been suboptimal, which is the Bhavantan, where you pay the farmer the difference between the MSP and the market price, assuming that the market price is lower than the MSP. Now you go back to the old traditional method, at which point the prime minister, you express surprise. You say prime minister comes in a meeting and he says that has any government in the past covered all 23 items for MSP? And he just poses a question, and you say that this poser was taken as a signal that that uh, that that this that having a implementing this MSP for the entire 23 crops will be very difficult. So you go back to the uh, old system where few crops get MSP and the others on paper they are there, but actual procurement doesn't happen of the other crop. So that's what we are seeing. So my next question is, what prompted the prime minister, according to you? What's your guess to sort of give up so easily after after starting the process with such great eagerness, as you said, Nipendra Mishra, Principal Secretary, bringing a faith accompanied proposal, and then after discussing the implementation prospects, suddenly what makes the Prime Minister uh, feel less confident or not confident at all about pulling this off, implementation of 23 crops minimum support price? What happens to him? Why does he just withdraw in a sense, withdraw the scheme? He surrenders in a sense, yeah.
I think this is not a correct characterization. It was not sudden in the sense. There were many meetings, as I described, and the solution was not really emerging. And as a prime minister, I think he wanted a solution to do. Now,
So
if the
he
solution,
didn't find any of the solutions workable. Is that what he's saying?
no, the 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 other two solutions were certainly not optimal.
Mhm.
The traditional solution appeared to be the most workable.
Uh-huh.
Now, under the traditional system, uh, the MSP operated for 23 prices,
Yeah.
23 crops. The only difference which the decision had made was that instead of MSP being fixed at less than 50% profit for some
Uh-huh.
of the crops, This time now it was 50% profit minimum.
Yeah.
So I think he came up with a very pragmatic question, which the administrators needed to answer, that if there was an MSP earlier also, and you had never succeeded in maintaining the prices for most of the crops other than wheat and rice at the MSP level, because that required procurement, and the procurement arrangement was not that standard and that robust. Why is it necessary at this stage now to be worried about procuring enough quantities to maintain the price at the MSP plus level? So when this poser, which was a very pragmatic question, was made, and let us also understand from the perspective which different stakeholders in that meeting was coming from. From our perspective, we were basically from the budgetary implications of that. And for me, when I heard this, which meant that if it is business as usual, that all right, there is an MSP, but you buy what you can practically buy, what your arrangements, whether the prices, market price get raised to the MSP level or not, budgetary implications were actually unaffected. So
No, I understand what you're saying, but clearly the impression that you're reading your chapter gives the impression that Prime Minister Modi showed the political will to do something which had not happened in the past. Now, his whole Mr. Modi's entire USP, which he keeps talking about, is to do something which has not happened in the past, to show the political will to do something which previous governments have not been able to do. So that seemed to have been the motivation initially to implement MSP 50% above the labor cost plus actual cost that farmers incurs, and imputed family labor, what is A to FL, 50% over that for all 23 crops. But at some stage, it is very clear, although you're trying to sort of you're trying to project it as a failure of the bureaucracy, but I am seeing it as a failure of the political will, because if he had continued to push you people to get a solution, he would definitely have got it. In fact, you also suggested some other solutions, which I don't know, which were rejected by Nipendra Mishra, which is also part of the chapter. So that would be, in my view, a correct characterization, that he did not show the political will to go through with his idea of doing something which previous governments had failed to do. Would you say that this what I'm saying is right?
So, Venu, you are entitled to your opinion. I have no doubt people can interpret it. There are two dimensions of that decision. One dimension was that you get 50% MSP, 50% plus profit MSP for the farmers, which has its own political other dimensions.
And at that time, many of the kharif crops were not even getting, were getting way below 50% of the formula. That is cost correct. To the farmer that's plus correct. Imputed family labor. It that's was correct. Not getting even 50% over that. Yeah.
That's correct. So that is correct. So you reach out to so many farmers and improve their earnings by raising it to the 50% profit level. That is the one dimension. The other dimension is to actually implement that decision credibly, to make sure that the farmers get it. One is an announcement, feel-good factor. Another is an implementation of decision.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So my only question is, what happened to Modi hai to mumkin hai slogan? In respect of what happened in regard to MSP during these meetings that you attended. That's all my question is. Anyway,
this was not my concern. Right. Yeah. That's a political question. What was his objectives? Were the two objectives there, that yes, raise to 50%, farmers should benefit, and make sure that this implement. These are the two dimensions, and both have different political implications as well.
Yeah.
But that's not my concern.
I know.
So
Can I
would
ask another question here, Mr. Garg? At one point, you thought that a direct income transfer scheme would help. Now, worldwide, a lot of countries they do follow a direct income transfer scheme because they are also WTO compatible. A lot of times, like America gives a lot of subsidies which are green boxed in WTO parlance, which are legitimate subsidies, but it's in the form of income transfer, which does not interfere with the prices or the markets, the agriculture markets, right? So when you talked about a direct income transfer as an option, you say that Nipendra Mishra immediately discouraged you, and he said this would be tantamount to political suicide. And at which point the Prime Minister was present in the meeting, and Prime Minister told Nipendra Mishra that politics is not your concern. You don't talk about politics. Leave that to us. Now, what exactly was he trying to convey?
So this is so MSP discussion is 2018 February, right? Mm-hmm. Then we moved to the income transfer issue in 2019. So 1 year passed.
Yeah. You captured that in the same chapter, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the chapter is same because the chapter is titled "Moving Farmers" because you are reaching out farmers, but in time and space. And there are two dimensions again of it. First, related to a discussions about how do you transfer the fertilizer subsidies.
Yeah.
Right. And the second is when the MSP actually did not work in that way. Yeah. And some of the state governments like Telangana, etc., had started coming up with direct income transfers or direct benefit transfers to the farmers. And the government of India also felt that if you want to sort of keep farmers on your side, you need to come up with something. So the incident which you have quoted was in connection with a discussion in the budget-related meeting previous year, when I had proposed that for the fertilizers, TBT, let us, on the line of the LPG system, which was very successfully implemented in the country, why not we give the farmers a certain kind of subsidy, right? Cash subsidy, and let the fertilizers be sold in the country at the market price. So when I proposed this, Mr. Nipendra Mishra, who has different views, obviously, he said what you just described, and the Prime Minister's literally snapped back, saying that leave the political decisions to us. Describe whether administratively it made sense or not, and that proposal did not find a place in the budget proposals of 2018-19. So when in 2019-20 budget, in February 2019,
just before the election, general elections,
just before the elections, when the Prime Minister office was discussing with the Agriculture Ministry, keeping me deliberately out of the discussions, that is also I have described. At that stage, I had separately done calculations that if you were to convert all the subsidies which the governments pay today into a per hectare subsidy, and you move over to this, which is direct transfers to farmers, and take away all the input subsidies as well as the MSP system. Obviously, this proposal was too radical, and but I presented it to Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, who was aware of the other discussion. So he said it made sense what you're saying, but take it to Mr. Mishra. And I took it to Mr. Mishra, who said, forget this, just keep it aside. We will.
And then you indicate that he was upset about this proposal coming again and again, right? He told you to keep away from income.
He definitely because I was not included in the discussion relating to that
Yeah.
Telangana type of scheme
Yeah.
in the government of India. And when I, on my initiative, took it and on the advice of Arun Jaitley, went to him, he said, just forget, this is not your, we will give you what is required to be said in the budget speech. That's it.
Okay. And after this, it's very interesting, Mr. Garg, that after this, a part of your suggestion, although your package was seen as radical, that is converting all the subsidies into kind of income transfer, which of course would have been a very complicated exercise also. It couldn't have been done in a few months. So I think they took your idea and they decided to do a income transfer, that famous income transfer of 6,000 rupees per year, which happened before the 2019 elections. Quite a separate scheme, but I think the idea came from what you had suggested, perhaps, that some income should be given to farmers directly. Is that true? No.
No, that's not true at all. The idea came from what was happening in Telangana. It's a replication of. In fact, I had a serious objection to it. I said, if you are giving it in addition to everything which is happening today, this is actually not desirable.
Not desirable.
My proposal was that you substitute the existing subsidies by the direct income transfer.
I get it. Yeah. I see.
So that is
so even on the other scheme, PM Kisan scheme, which you say was taken from Telangana's Raitu Bandhu, etc., right? And Odisha's some income transfer to farmers to probably make up for their loss of incomes or not enough income, right? Farm income. Even there, you say in this chapter that you use the word that you are baffled. You said when Piyush Goyal, who was interim finance minister at that time, because Mr. Jaitley was unwell, recovering from his ailments, you say that a proposal comes that there are 12 crore farmers to whom the 6,000 rupees should be transferred, and you point out that in India there aren't 12 crore farmers. There are only about 8 crore farmers. So where is this extra 4 crore farmers you're getting from? And at which point the government does maybe that was done in a hurry, that whole research. It implements a scheme for 11 crore farmers, and then subsequently they come back to your point and they keep reducing the number of farmers to 8 crore eventually. Now, isn't that very arbitrary policy that you start with 12 crores, then you realize that there aren't 12 crore farmers, and then you keep reducing the number of farmers that you give PM Kisan? So can you describe this arbitrariness? And you say you are baffled. Why do you say you are baffled?
So, quite right. So this was not required, but Mr. Piyush Goyal, in one of the meetings, we meet very often, sometimes many times in a day during the budget to discuss. So he mentioned, because as I earlier told you, was kept away from the discussions relating to the farm schemes and all. So he said this is what the discussion was today. And this has been decided to give it to 12 crores farmers, the 6,000 rupees subsidy. In any case, that paragraph was to come sometime in a day or two to me. So I immediately told him, I said, factually, in the country, we don't have 12 crore farmers. There is a confusion between what is the holdings, operational holdings in the country.
Yes.
Operational holdings don't equal the number of farmers.
Yeah, many of them are not farming there, right?
Right. So operational holdings are more than what the number of farmers. Incidentally, in 2011-12, the country had done an SCC, socio-economic caste survey, which had brought out the number of the farmers precisely. Yeah. I remember that number. That number was about 8 crore or so. So I told him, how come you are going to announce? And if I have to put that number of 12 crores, I need to be sure that this 12 crores is correct. This baffles me. So when he heard us out, he said, "ये तो फिर कुछ गलत हो रहा है," something like this, he said. And he promised to take it to the Prime Minister's office once again to bring. And later on, he told us that he had discussed this also. But he was told that it's too late in the day now to change it. So let it go as it is. When the scheme is to be formulated, we will see it. And as it happened later on, in the scheme formulation committee, which was headed by the cabinet secretary, I was included as a member. And that stage, we pointed out that there are no 12 crores. And as you have mentioned, so they started out in the first year, that 1920, where there was, in some states, there were a lot of duplications, etc., which raised it to about.
There has been a lot of abuse of the scheme. The numbers 4 crore, I mean, extra 4 crore needs to be explained. One doesn't know who all are getting this money, you know.
No, the government itself has reduced. So the last year's number is less than 9 crore. So it's between 8 and 9 crore.
So, Mr. Garg, now the question is, if the government itself reduced the number to 8 or 9, then who are the 2-3 crore people that they paid initially? I mean, there should be some accountability, no? If they didn't deserve it, if they didn't deserve it, then how are they getting it? And who are getting it? Yeah, and I mean, were they? I mean, they could have been at the local level. There could have been manipulation. They could have been party workers. You know, you never know. You know. So,
this is a very fit case for the auditor
it's a fit
general.
Case for investigation. Yeah,
absolutely. At least first the auditor general should get into it to find out where the excess was and who were the beneficiary, who benefited this.
And it's not a small. It's not a small number. You know, 30 million. If you gave, say, 30 million extra, who didn't deserve 30 to 40 million for, say, even for a year, then who are these people? And this is taxpayers' money. And who did they go to? This needs to be thoroughly be investigated.
I have no doubt about it. Yeah. This is a serious issue, must be investigated.
And now, finally, Mr. Garg, I want to come back to the situation as it exists today. This time when the farmers protested on the borders of Haryana, the government, again, a lot of TV channels ran a figure which ostensibly came from the government, again from the PMO, saying that the implication for implementing MSP for all 23 crops, legally guaranteed MSP, would be 10 to 11 lakh crores. Now, where do you think this 11 lakh crores has come from? Because as far as I understand, in order to make such a calculation, you have to have a real-time experience of what the prices are, of what the production is. If there is excess production, obviously the price would be below MSP. But if there is shortage of production in some crops, as in pulses, there need not be such a big procurement needed also. So, what do you think about this number? Where is this number coming from your experience?
So, Venu, I have no idea what is the authorship of this number, what kind of calculations they have done. But if you want to reach out to a number which is more credible, you have to take into account what is the market value of the crops which are under subsidy. And then you have to zero in on further what crops. Do you take all 25 crops into account, or you take into only wheat, rice, which you are doing? The wheat rice current market value is, in my judgment, hardly about 8 to 9 lakh crores. That is the total value, and you would never procure this kind of quantity.
And so you never procure the entire amount, right? You never procure the entire amount. And so you sell it in the market.
You remember I described this earlier, that when we first did that exercise about 50% implications.
You came up with a figure of 35,000 crore extra, right?
That's correct. So assuming the existing level of procurement, we didn't, right. So that number came 35,000 crores. Now, to do a credible exercise, You have to take number one, whether you're talking about the current MSP price, C2, A2 plus FL, or you're taking this higher price, C2. What is the level of procurement you want to assume? 20%, 30%, 50%, some crops or all crops. Then, and what is the basic demand and supply situation?
Yeah, there are many variables. Yeah.
Many variables. So if right now, if you are in the market, when the wheat and rice prices are higher than the MSP prices, you may not actually need to procure anything. So this is not, I think, a desirable level of debate. I don't think people need to be scared that you will have to spend 9 to 10 lakh crores or something. This is absurd.
Absurd, yeah. So thank you, Mr. Subhash Garg, for talking to us. You really brought a lot of clarity to a lot of issues. And I think going back to your chapter gives a good perspective on how to understand the present, the issue as it exists today in the present day. Thank you very much for talking to us.
I must say, Venu, before we leave, today the issues are different. There are two issues in my judgment. One is this, instead of A2FL to C2.
Yeah. So we have about 1 minute. Can you just complete it? One minute.
Bigger issue is the guarantee. That's a separate matter altogether. We can discuss it at some point of time. I have certain views. I'm writing an opinion piece, which hopefully will appear in Deccan Herald tomorrow. I have a very different view about how to find a solution. In my judgment, this legal guarantee is not a desirable solution at all.
Okay. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you, Venu. Thank you very much.
द वायर के और वीडियोस देखने के लिए सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल आइकन पर क्लिक करें। स्वतंत्र पत्रकारिता की आर्थिक मदद करने के लिए डिस्क्रिप्शन में दिए गए लिंक पर जाएं और अपनी राशि चुनें।